Good morning. Today we are going to be learning about numbers and more specifically recognizing that a number can be used to represent how many objects are in a set up to 10. Excuse me. The objective for today's lesson is that given a set of objects, students will be able to correctly match the number associated with the corresponding set of objects shown with 80% accuracy. The rationale for today's lesson is that counting is a part of everyday life. However, it is not just counting that's important. Understanding one-to-one correspondence is crucial for early learners in mathematics. Students need to understand that a given number corresponds with the given amount of objects. Recognizing that numbers represent quantities is essential for future mathematical learning. The materials being used in today's lesson are bouncy balls, toy cars, an ice cream cone counting worksheet, numbers 1 through 10, which will also include number squares 1 through 10, and a one-on-one correspondence counting worksheet that will be used later in the lesson for assessment. Getting ready for the lesson, students will sit no more than 4 to a table, with 3 tables being available to use in the classroom. There will be two piles of bouncy balls ready to be counted by the teacher. Each student will get a randomized amount of bouncy balls during the we do portion of the lesson. And each ice cream cone count and match worksheet will be accompanied by their number squares 1 through 10. And finally, following completion of the lesson, students will be given the one-on-one correspondence worksheet for assessment. Prior background knowledge students need to have in order to successfully complete this lesson is that students should know how to count forward in sequence from 0 to 10. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. We are faced with numbers during our everyday experiences. Recognizing that a certain number relates to an amount of objects is important to know of how much something there is. Let's use toy cars as an example. We can count the cars to know that there are 10. So let's take a look at our cars and we'll count them to know that there are 10. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If we take one away, are we still left with 10? Counting the remaining toy cars will show that there are now only 9. We're going to go through and work on our one-on-one correspondence counting with our fingers to show that there are only 9 cars left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. A number is a value expressed through various forms such as symbols or words and is used when we count. There are different types of counting, rote counting and one-to-one counting. Rote counting is simply when we state numbers in sequence, like I had demonstrated earlier, 0, 1, 2, and 3, so on and so forth. Whereas one-to-one correspondence counting is the understanding that a given number applies to a certain amount of objects. How do we one-on-one count? One-on-one counting requires you to use your finger to physically touch the items you are counting while saying the numbers aloud. So for example, with the cars, we had our cars lined up, and as I was using my index finger and touching the cars physically, I was also counting in order numerically from 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. First, I'm going to show you how to do one-on-one, and when I'm finished, we will go through and do one-on-one practice counting together. I have 2 piles of bouncy balls. So let's take a look and count our bouncy balls. 1, 2, 3. There are 3 bouncy balls in our first set. Our second set of bouncy balls is going to have a different number. So let's go ahead and count those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. In the second pile of bouncy balls, there were 7. Just because the first pile of bouncy balls has had 3 does not mean that the second pile is also going to have 3 just because they are the same objects. This is showing students how one-to-one correspondence works, that just because the objects are the same does not mean the numerical value is also always going to be the same. At this point in the lesson, I'm going to check the students' understanding using a 0 to 2 finger scale. 0 fingers will indicate that the students, if majority of students hold up 0 fingers, will indicate that their understanding of the lesson is minimal. And at this point, I will return to the beginning of the lesson and reteach. If majority of students are holding up 1 finger, that indicates to me that they have a 50-50 understanding of the lesson and could use another example. So I will go ahead and give another example using the bouncy balls or cars if need be. If majority of students hold up both fingers, that indicates that the understanding of counting objects using the one-to-one correspondence method is firm, and I will continue with the lesson. So let's do some guided practice together. We are going to be counting dots on ice cream cones. So if we take a look at our first worksheet, we can see that the pink ice cream cone has a different amount of dots from the rest of the other colored ice cream cones. Let's practice together. First, we're going to start with the pink ice cream cone, and we're going to count out loud, making sure our index finger points to each individual dot as we say our numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 dots on our ice cream cone. So using the number cards that each student should have been given, we are going to find the number 5, and we're going to use our glue stick to glue it on to our ice cream cone. As shown. The yellow ice cream cone, I'll do another demonstration. We're going to take our index finger again and one by one count the blue dots on the ice cream cone. 1, 2, 3. We're going to find the number 3 and we're going to glue it onto our ice cream cone. As shown. Students will continue to work on the worksheet, and there is also a second worksheet that has dots ranging from numbers 1 all the way up to 10. At this point, I will again assess students using the 0 to 2 finger scale that I had previously mentioned after the modeling that I did. So at this point in time, it's students' turn to work independently. They will be giving the assessment worksheet, which is the one-to-one correspondence. The numbers that were on the side have already been cut out for the students into individual squares. So that way the only job the student has is to count the animals that are within each box and match the number to their box. So let's take a look at the first one. The first one is horses. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 horses in our first box. So I'm going to find the number 9. And I'm going to glue it onto the box as shown. After having practiced counting a set of objects, you can see how it is different from starting at 1 and saying numbers aloud until you reach 10, which is rote counting. When counting with a set of objects, it is important to remember that each object also represents a number. So if you start counting bouncy balls, 1, 2, you need to make sure that you apply a number to each object you're counting. You will now be able to match numbers to the correct set of objects shown, as well as count many objects that are represented around us within our everyday lives. In the next lesson, we will learn how a number can also represent the position it's in within a set of objects. For example, first, second, third, and fourth.